This is Target Score Weekly with Joey Slattery and Taylor Allen. Welcome to the first episode ever of Target Score Weekly. We're at the halfway point of the CEBL season. This is a podcast focused mainly on the Winnipeg Sea Bears and the CEBL at large. My name is Joey Slattery. I'm the sideline reporter with the Winnipeg Sea Bears, and with me is Taylor Allen, reporter for the Winnipeg Free Press. We are your host. Taylor, how you doing?
Doing good, man. I'm doing especially a lot better now than I was maybe 6 to 8 hours ago when we knew we were going to record tonight, but we didn't even have a name for this show yet, even though we've been talking about this for weeks and whatnot. So I won't lie, I was a little stressed this morning, but luckily we came up with a good one, or at least we think a good name at the last second, and here we are. So yeah, just being honest with the audience, we're not that prepared, I guess.
You came up with the name. My initial name was Reporter Row. I couldn't get past that. I like yours. You came up with it today. We were prepared. We put way too much thought into this, I would say, considering that the thought came out of nowhere as we kind of thought it would. But it came out of nowhere, and we're here, and we've been talking about this forever. I'm really excited. I know you're really excited because we were talking about this even before the team ever tipped off. This is something we wanted to do the moment Winnipeg got a team, and we're finally here.
Yeah, that's a funny you said that. So it seemed like anytime you and I bumped into each other, whether it was covering a Bombers practice or game or something or anything else, we would talk about the CEBL, even though Winnipeg did not even have a team. So when it finally did come to fruition, obviously, we're like, hey, holy crap. And I remember you DM'd me a couple months ago. Like, I was in Mexico at the time. You're like, hey, man, when you get back, we should talk about doing a Sea Bears podcast. And I was like, okay. But, like all the time, right? Buddies always say, oh, we should do a podcast. We should do a podcast. And, no one ever makes it happen. But here we are. So good for us. That's, pat ourselves on the back already.
I love how I slid into your DMs during vacation. Sorry about that, man. But business is business. I should note I also am a sports reporter for CTV. So that's why we commingle. We do cover Winnipeg sports at large. Whether it be some Jets, Bombers, local sports, curling, you name it, we cover it out here in Winnipeg. But the Sea Bears are where we are right now, and that's where our summer's been focused on. And that excitement's really lived up so far, Taylor, I have to say, because, we didn't really know what to expect with this team. You and I knew a little bit about the league. I had lived in Edmonton for a while, so I'd been to some Stingers games. This would have been like 2019, 2020 when they were winning their championships. And then when I moved here in 2020, almost immediately we were on the rumors of, is Winnipeg getting a team? Where are they going to play? They end up playing at Canada Life Center. And again, I wasn't sure what to expect. And I know it sounds a little weird because they're playing in basically an NBA-style arena. But, when I remember Edmonton, they play at the Expo Center out there. And it's a really cool venue, but it's really, really, I would say it's more intimate. It's a more intimate venue. It's a lot smaller, but it's loud. It's fun. And I remember hearing the commissioner of the CEBL, Mike Moriali, saying that's the template, I guess, the blueprint of what they're trying to build. And I was thinking, man, Canada Life Center might be too big and cavernous, if you can't pack the place and everything else. But, I mean, the first game, do you remember what the sellout was? I think it was like just slightly north of 7,000. It wasn't like a sellout 2 times over. Like, they sold out the original book and they extended seats, and then they just opened up the whole lower bowl. That was incredible. And then ever since then, I don't know what the lowest attendance was, but I'm not sure if it's been under 4,000, and it's been rocking. I've absolutely loved every minute of it.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. So after that first game, you and I both were fortunate. We get to go to so many different sporting events here in Manitoba. But that first Sea Bears game at home, that was one of the best atmospheres I've seen in any sporting event here in forever. Really, honestly, that was just such an awesome vibe and whatnot. But it was interesting. I had a couple people on Twitter message me after that game saying, it's just the first game. You just wait until the second game. They'll be lucky to get 2,000 people out. Just a bunch of, negative people. We'll call them that, I guess. And no, we're still early, right? It's still only halfway through the first season. But like you said, yeah, I think the lowest attendance they've had is around the 4,000 mark, which is still pretty darn good for a weeknight in the summer. But yeah, I remember I wrote a story about the league after they had their inaugural draft a couple of years ago for season 1. And I spoke to some of the Winnipeg guys that got picked. Justice Allen was one of them. And I spoke to Mike Morreale at the time as well, just saying like, hey, this new league, Winnipeg's obviously a huge basketball city. What is there any talks about this league coming to Winnipeg? And he obviously does his research because he knew all about Winnipeg and our demographics and whatnot. But the hang up has been for these years is the venue, right? I mean, Canada Life Center is massive compared to every other venue in the league, and we don't have a medium-size arena. And we won't go into the weeds on that because that was supposed to happen, but it never did. And that's maybe why, or not maybe, that is why we no longer have a junior hockey team here in Winnipeg. But that's been the hang-up for the whole time, really. So when it was announced that we were getting the team and that they were playing at Canada Life, I remember so many people being surprised, and I was as well. So I think people, were a little weary how that was going to work exactly. But yeah, like you said, it's been a success so far for sure.
Well, I think I didn't know, for instance, that even Canada Life would be on the table. I was kind of operating under the impression that wasn't on the table just because the only other team that I can think of would have been Hamilton before they were Brampton, playing at, is it First Ontario? Like the old Cops Coliseum out in Hamilton. And Saskatchewan was playing at SaskTel Center, which is a pretty big establishment where the Saskatchewan Rush play in the National Lacrosse League. So yeah, it was a cool venue. They pumped in a lot of production value. I mean, being down on the court, it's one of the more fun jobs I've ever had, doing the sideline reporting, particularly there. Winning helps though with that in terms of attendance. And they've been doing a lot of it. I don't think that I could have predicted a team just starting out would have been first place halfway through the season. I like watching them play and seeing the other teams that we've seen play so far. It's not like a total shock that that's happening, but I was kind of blown away that, they were able to get 7 wins in their first 10 games, only 3 losses. And that is, well, I'm not going to say by far the best in the league, but it's a pretty fair margin. Right behind Winnipeg in the standings right now is Calgary, second place at 6-5, and that's the second best record. And there's a ton of teams at 5-5, basically all in the East, with Edmonton, who's also coming along as the season's progressing there. The Stingers, that is. But I mean, Winnipeg's been on a tear this first part of the season. I don't know if it's the fans or what. The chemistry seems to be there. They seem to be having fun. And the other thing, too, is it seems, I don't know if you feel the same thing about this league, but because it's such a short season, 20 games, a loss kind of feels like when the Bombers lose. They haven't lost a lot in the last few years. Not that we're going to talk too much Bombers today, but, the other day they got pumped by BC at home. And I was watching our friend Darren Bombing at Bonfire Sports was watching their post-game After Dark, and they called it a therapy session, which I thought was great. But you just saw the freak out, right? It's like, oh no, we lost a game. We're now 2-1. And it just kind of carries more volume than you think. And I felt that a little bit on the first loss for Winnipeg. It's just not that, shouldn't say I was worried. It's just like you feel that like, oh, this could turn really quickly. But then they kept winning. How did you feel about those first few games, especially just kind of getting used to the pace of the league and going through that mini roller coaster, if you will, and how quickly it turned around to the up and up where they are right now at the halfway point?
I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. I thought this team was going to be awful this year. I really did. And I remember even talking to Coach Mike Taylor before the season in an interview, and I straight up asked him, like, is this a playoff team, do you think? And he's like, you know what? Honestly, it's our first year in the league. You look at 2 of the expansion teams last season, they both had 4 or 5 wins apiece. I know Scarborough ended up making the finals, but that's only 1 out of the 3 that really found success right away. So he was really like tempering expectations. He wasn't promising anything, which was smart of him. But us being in the media, you got to ask these questions and hope they give you a juicy response, obviously. But yeah, I mean, just looking at the roster and stuff, and anytime they announced a player signing and whatnot, I'd kind of do some research on them, and yeah, I don't know. I felt like there were some question marks on this team, and again, just being an expansion, I just kind of had some doubts that they would find success right away. I even told Ted Wyman of the Winnipeg Sun before the season started, I was like, you know what, I think they'll win around 5 games. I think that's kind of fair. And they start rattling off wins, the first couple weeks of the season, still are obviously, And every time the Sea Bears would win a game, Ted would always razz me about it. He's like, oh, 5 wins, eh? Well, they already got 3 wins. Oh, they already got 4 wins. And now they're at 7 wins. So now I look like a total idiot, obviously. But yeah, I mean, we've seen them more than any other team, obviously covering them and whatnot. But I mean, they're the best story in the league by far right now. I mean, Teddy Allen's a guy we'll get more into this, but that's a guy who's, you could put him in the MVP, race. Absolutely. He's second in scoring and top 5 in rebounds as well. And, Mike Taylor, I mean, how is he not the coach of the year, at least at the midway point too,
Yeah,
right? So
GM of the year even
yeah,
too, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the the on court success and just the fan engagement and the excitement around the city about this team too. I mean, so far, again, it's still really early one up, but like so far, I don't think even David Asper and everyone who works for the Sea Bears thought this was going to go as well as it has so far.
Yeah, good to see Teddy Wyman keeping you accountable on your predictions, though. That's good. So we have a few people on your back here. That's what I like to hear. But no, you're right. And even talking to people that knew sources that have access to these players, whether through CEBL or other means. I think there are a lot of people that had their question marks on this team. The construction of the roster and things like that. And we've talked about it too. I mean, the style of play that they've played, right? And some of their best players. Like one of the things for me was, EJ Anasike. And we've talked about this. The offense sometimes doesn't move as quickly as we're used to, right? Like when you're watching the NBA and kind of that motion offense and just people moving all the time. This is an offense that stalls a lot, but it works. I don't know if it's just a matter of keeping the defense, a little flat-footed for an extra second or two that just kind of opens up certain things. But, when they play post-game a lot, and they're not that big. I mean, EJ Anasike, I don't have his height on me, but I'm just under 6'1". He's only a couple inches taller than me. But when that guy's on the court, he looks like he's like 7 feet tall, and is a guy that really plays inside, no more than mid-range is where he's key. But, and even Chad Posthumous, how often, in the last few games he's played a lot better, but his minutes were relatively low as the biggest guy on the team. He was out there, for tip off as the center, and then he'd be off for a good portion of the game, right? So it's just kind of interesting to see how this team's evolved. And, Mike Taylor said it the other day when we were chatting when I asked him, what's kind of clicking here, right? Like everybody kind of seems to be clicking along. And it was after the Calgary loss. They, that was one they really wanted to win. They were tied for first, I think, at that point. With Calgary, and Calgary ended up taking over first place in that game. And they didn't play particularly well. He admitted that. And I asked him why he was so confident, because when they came home, I think it was against Vancouver, he was basically said, we're going to come back a lot better. He didn't say they were going to win the game, but that's what he was alluding to. Like, they're going to win the game, and they did just that. It was just this, that confidence in it. And you hear coaches say it all the time, but there was this weird, not saying it to, what's what I'm looking for is, grandstanding or, trying to amp up their team. There's no one there. This wasn't on camera. And so the next game I asked him, I'm like, what gives you that confidence that you just kind of know they're going to bounce back? You don't have a lot of experience with this team. They don't have a lot of experience with each other. And he called each game a puzzle. And he said, we're getting better at solving the puzzles in each game. And it's totally true, man. I mean, you're seeing, going back to Chad Posthumous for a quick second, like that guy's time starts going up when he's playing against legit number 5s, right? Like Julian Roche and him were going at it in that Saskatchewan game on Friday. When he's up against guys like Nick Ward in Vancouver and Georgie B, like these are big dudes. And when he has those matchups, he is a much bigger piece of that puzzle. And it's not to say that he's not an important part of this team, but the role elevates depending on the matchups. And I think they're starting to key in on that. And when guys are going in the game, substitutions, things like that, who's going to give you the spark? But it's just interesting to see how the teams evolve from, game 1 to game 10. But the evolve has been very successful. Like right from the get-go, that first win was huge. I think that's what kind of got everybody locked in. There was that weird 2-week, was maybe close to 3-week break, I think it was, between home games 1 and home game 2, because of the whole NHL has to lock out. I think that's what it is. The NHL locks out 2 weeks for the finals, like every NHL arena or something like that. But anyway, it was a bit weird. And fans came back. They were still hungry, even though they went on the road. They won a bunch of games. They seemed to have gotten closer, and they just kind of picked up from where they went off. It's the losses. I think all losses were on the road. Did they lose one at home? I'm trying to think now off the top of my head. I don't have that on me, but because they lost in
Yeah,
Calgary, they
I
lost
don't
in
remember, but
Brampton. Oh no, the Edmonton loss. Oh yeah, that was the
oh
first
yes,
bad
you
one
should
when they
remember
lost
that
to the
one.
Stingers.
That was the by far the worst game of the year. They're probably glad that we forgot about that one.
Totally, and that's the one that turned everything around for Edmonton.
Oh, exactly. No, absolutely. But I think the thing is though, if you actually look back at the first game, there were actually some signs in that game that this team was going to have some success. I mean, they won the game, but more so than that, Teddy Allen that night, we were just talking about how he could be MVP this year. He was atrocious in game one. You know, there are going to be some nights where he's by far the best player on the floor, but when he's off, that's those are going to be the games where you're like cringing when he's shooting. But luckily for the Seabears, that has not really happened since then. He's been red hot ever since.
But here's what blows my
So
mind
there
with.
was Teddy.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was cutting you off there.
No, it's all right. So there was it's episode 1. We're still figuring out each other out. But it's game one. But Chad Posthumous as well. You look at that game one as well. He gets some pretty silly fouls off the hop, right? Like local guys probably a little too excited. Some questionable judgment on defense there, and he barely plays at all. And Simon Hildebrand, freshman from the U of M, he's off the bench right away. What was it, 2-3 minutes into game one? You're like, oh boy, this might not be pretty, but he ends up playing pretty well. But yeah, so basically my point is, two of their most important guys in game one, things did not go according to plan for them, to say the least. I know Chad got the winning basket at the end, but really that was not a great night for him, and they still found a way to win. I mean, that's kind of been this team's story so far, is that every game that they've won, it's kind of been different, right? I mean, yeah, there's going to be the games where Teddy scores you 40 points, and that's an obvious one. But you look back at their last win on Friday. EJ came up huge with 10 points in the fourth quarter. Jelani Wesson-Gale, he hits 3 threes in the fourth quarter, because teams are now guarding Teddy a lot differently. Like, the word is out, obviously, that this guy's the best player, the best scorer on the team. So we have a great vantage point being in the second row for games, and you see the way these defenders, like, they're grabbing Teddy, like they are all over him. So there's a lot of points in the game now where, there's only so much he could really do on offense, because he can't even get the ball in his hands sometimes. So, yeah, I think this last game was another great example as to how, it's not just a one-man team. Like, this team has been getting different guys stepping up. Glenn Yang a couple games ago as well. So it's not just the Teddy Allen show, and I think that really bodes well, because, Teddy Allen, like I said, he's not going to hit 9 3-pointers every game, right? So, yeah, this team has some guys for sure.
Well, the thing that blows my mind with Teddy Allen of everything, though, is that that guy wills his way to 25 points a game. It feels like that first game. I think he only had 8, maybe 13. I don't even know if he had double digits that game. But yeah, you're right. It wasn't a great game. But every game since then, he is just a point machine. And there's been times where he's triple teamed. And he's still able to find an opening or put up a shot that you think has no chance of going in. Sometimes off the release, I swear to God, it's been tipped. I say half his shots, I'm like, oh, was that tipped? And it looks like it's nowhere near the bucket, and then it just goes up and boom, nothing but nylon. He's so interesting to watch. Going back to that first game, though, I think that was an important game for Winnipeg, as in the city and the fans, because you had a full house and no one understood the target score, which this show was named after. But no one understood the target score, which, if you're listening for the first time and you don't know much about it, the target score is essentially the leading team, or the team leading at or after 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It's that score plus 9. So if a team is leading 80-70, the target score would be 89. And it doesn't matter who gets there first, or it doesn't matter, sorry. It doesn't matter what the deficit is, rather. It's the first team to get there first, they win. So there's no clock. Right, so if you have 70, you can get 19 points before your opponent gets 9. You can still win that game, and it just makes everything so much more interesting. Which is what happened with the Vancouver game. It kind of seemed like it was in the bag, and everybody was feeling good at target score time. And I don't think they really understood why target score is so much different than what they watch in the NBA. And then when you see Vancouver make that comeback, right? And then it looks like, oh, maybe Vancouver's going to win this game. And then, of course, Chad scores the winning bucket, the local boy playing his first pro game at home, all storybook ending. But I think that was an important game in the way they won that. You know, you don't want to obviously give up a big lead, but to just show the fans that this is how exciting it is. And even in that Edmonton game, I can't remember what the deficit was a target score, but it was not close. Like, I want to say it was like close to 30 points differential. And fans weren't leaving because, you know, it's kind of like baseball. Like, you could be down any amount of points, but there's no time limit. Like, it just, you have to play defense. And there's no dead time at the end. There's no garbage time because you need to win the game. And Winnipeg has showed time again. Another thing we haven't really touched on yet is just how difficult they've found the target score period, being outscored severely, which is kind of funny to see. Like, you know, at one point it was more than double, maybe close to triple what the other, like what they were scoring, the other team was scoring. That's large in part because they had larger leads, but they were giving them up. But they're still winning the game, and that's the key to the whole thing. But the target score is just a unique element to this game that I've absolutely grown to love, and I think, or I wish the NBA would adopt it too, because it just makes every game that much more interesting.
You wish the NBA would adopt it too.
100%.
That's a hot take, Joey Flattery.
They used They used it in the All-Star game a few years ago, and like I remember people on Twitter. It was called the, I don't know if we're allowed to say it, but the rhymes with Helam. Ending, and they used it in that one All-Star game, and fans loved it. And I think it's just a matter of, it's, you know, the old way of doing it, and the NBA of all the leagues is pretty progressive with things. Like, they've made some major changes in their game, you know, throughout its history, like just, you know, the key 3-point line. Like, they've done really big things that have changed the game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went to something like this. The only thing is, I think players might be wouldn't want it just because it could hurt your averages, right? Like, once you get to target score time, there's only 9 points to be scored if you're in the lead. So that was another thing. Teddy Allen has the tied record 42 points in a game. But with those 9 points, like, you know, if he doesn't get those 9 points or whatever, like, you could be close to a record and not get it. So it was kind of weird to think that the record's only 42 points, but they play less minutes each quarter. They're only 10-minute quarters, and there's only, if you're on the leading team, 9 points to be had once that clock stops. So it kind of makes sense that it wouldn't be like 81 points, you know, the old Kobe, but that's the reality of this league.
It's funny whenever it is target score time, it's always kind of funny just paying attention to the crowd at CBER's games, because, you know, there a lot of people are expecting that, right? They know how the league works, but for people who just, you know, bought a ticket to a basketball game, they showed up, they must be thinking, what the hell is going on right now? Like, I know they explain it on the PA system and stuff and whatnot, but it is different. And I mean, I'm old school, right?
Yeah.
Like, I miss the days of 90s basketball, you know, where they didn't shoot 3-pointers on every possession, and there was, you know, big 7-foot guys who could do nothing but rebound. Like, that's my basketball, you know, real aggressive basketball, as opposed to what kind of the NBA is kind of turning into. So I won't lie, like, I was a little skeptical when the league first announced that they were going to go by that, but. And I'm not going as far as you to say the NBA should do that. I think that might be taking it one step too far. But I will say, for the CEBL, genius move. I think any league, you know, not a minor league, but any league after, you know, an NBA, an NFL, NHL, whatever, you need something to kind of stand out. If you're the exact same, I mean, why, you know, are people going to want to choose that alternative, right? That's what kind of makes the CFL so much fun, is because they have so many different rules and stuff from the NFL. It's basically a different game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of always the knock on basketball. You hear from the hockey people and whatever, right? At the end of the game, they just foul each other. It's a free throw shooting contest, and the last 2 minutes take an hour. And you know, us being basketball guys, we've heard that a million times, right? And you can't really argue with it, sadly, because sometimes, yeah, the end of a basketball game could be quite the drag. But yeah, like with this though, I mean, the CBears especially make it interesting, because it seems every time they do, you know, enter target score, they kind of crumble a little bit then before they pull it out. So they add some drama to the game. But yeah, it totally eliminates the fouling at the end of the games. Every basket matters. And the best part of all, there's always a game-winning shot. I mean, sadly for the Seabears, I think 3 or 4 of them have been free throws from Jelani, Weston, Gale, so not exactly
It
the
still makes the free throw
Watson
that
Gale,
much more
sorry.
interesting, though. It makes the
It
free
does.
throw that much
It
more
does.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, ideally, you want to see Watson Gale win it with a 3-pointer, which is what he did
Totally.
last week.
Yeah.
But yeah, it had so much excitement to the game.
That was my biggest fear was like, yeah, ending on a foul shot. And then when you see it in action, there's a lot of pressure on that foul shot now, right? If you have the game on the line and you can win it there, like when that happens, say in the NCAA tournament, we're all paying attention to it, right? Like we're all, on pins and needles. Is this guy going to hit it for the win? So it's like it's still exciting even as a foul shot. But you're right. And then I think it was the Scarborough game the other day that ended on that posterizing dunk. Like that's kind of cool too, right? It's not a buzzer beater, but it's still a game winner, and it's really cool in that sense. So going to what you said, why I think it would be cool if they adopted it is that if you give a team like a Golden State who's down 20 or 25, then they start shooting the lights out. I mean, at 4 minutes left, if they're down that much, very quickly, especially in the regular season, that game is just forfeited. They're looking ahead to the next game. And I kind of like that that's not an option here. You have to play every game because there's always a chance to win, even when it seems like you're down and out. So not saying it's going to happen, but I would love to see it happen, at least for whether like even if it's just the All-Star game or something like that, if they kept it around. But I do think, or maybe you go regular season and then in the playoffs, kind of like hockey, right? Shootout in the regular season, come playoffs, you just play until it's over, kind of thing. But no, I've loved it. I'm a huge fan. I think it creates a whole new level of excitement, and I don't think it hurts the essence of the game in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I think it improves it. So yeah, no, I've been really really good with the target score ending. And I think that, the more leagues want to take it on, great. But right now it's Canada's, and that's cool too.
It also gave Jelani, Watson, Gale a nickname, Chad. I don't know if you heard this after the last win. We had Chad and Jelani in the press room, and Chad said, "Yeah, we all called Jelani the closer because he's finished so many games for them." And it seems whenever they are in the last few minutes of the game or in target zone, he steps up, man. Like he always hits a big shot. That guy's got ice in his veins, and it's kind of funny. He's coming off of his first year of pro basketball, playing for the Bristol Flyers, I believe, in the BBL. And he was telling me a couple weeks ago, actually, that the way that the season ended with them, he averaged 12 points per game, which was pretty good for a rookie, of course. And he said the last game of the season, I think they were in the semifinals, or it might have been one of the finals games. But anyways, he was held scoreless. He said he didn't play very aggressive, and he ended up with 0 points. And he said after the game, he's like, I never want to feel this ever again. I'm going to be way more aggressive moving forward. And sure enough, we keep mentioning game one. He was really the hero of game one. He led the team in points, and like we've been saying, he's been coming up so big at the end of the games. He comes off the bench, but he's been finishing all these games because he is so clutch in the end. So you want to talk about a guy who's been really kind of a breakout star for the team. It's a Jelani, Watson, Gale, and that's a guy that people didn't really know about because he was he's the only guy from outside of North America on the team. And B, he played, and he played NCAA Division II hoops, right? So he's kind of an unknown. That was one of those signings where it's kind of on paper it didn't look maybe that impressive, but he's ended up being he could be the sixth man of the year, really.
Well, that's what shows another aspect. Like going back to the target score thing, like that gives you as a scout, another element to that intangible skill of being a closer or being clutch. Like every game you have that opportunity and what you do in those clutch situations. So are you forcing up shots? Are you still playmaking? How does the pressure affect you? And you're put through it every single game. So you're going to build that mental strength in terms of, how to play under there, how to keep calm in the situation, because you have to do it every single game here. And it's paid off for him because he just signed, is it Brussels? I think it was Brussels that he just signed a new contract for the fall. So scouts are already seeing this, right? Between his play out in Bristol here, and now it was Berlin. I think I'll have to double check on that when you're talking. But yeah, he's already signed another contract. So that's what's happening with this here is, with this league is you're getting another element of basketball that you don't normally get in a normal game, because every game you get to test this, and he's a guy that's really kind of broke out in that regard.
So maybe we should get into, we're at the official midway point of
Yeah.
the year for the Sea Bears, at least 7-3, first place. So maybe I mean, this question is probably the most obvious question I've ever asked my entire life, but who the team MVP is for the first half of the year. We could get into that. Maybe we could do the top Canadian for the first half of the year as well. Is there any other imaginary awards that we can hand out, you think? Or are you missing anything?
Say we go. No, you're right. I think we do MVP breakout Canadian as well, since this is a league that is 70% Canadian. Two Canadians on the floor at all times. That's another rule in this league. So yeah, I think we do that one for sure. So
You know what? Actually, let's pivot here. Let's not be all sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows or whatever. Let's do maybe a disappointment of the first half. I think we could probably agree that Jelani is the breakout, right, of the first half. So maybe there's a guy that's been a little disappointing.
I'm not gonna be too hard on it because it's the U Sports, but I thought after that first game, Simon Hildebrandt would have more of an impact. I think.
Wow, that's
Well, I'm not picking on him.
savage move.
I'm not picking on him at all. And that's why I wanted to preface that with being the U Sports guy. Like, this is a huge learning curve for him for sure. But he had the big game. I think he had 13 points. His best game was the first game, right? And then he had that one big game where he hit it was a series, I think, like maybe 3 threes in a row that kind of brought one of those games. It was a win. I want to say it might have been the Scarborough game. But yeah, he's had moments for sure. But he's getting a lot of playing time, and there's certain times where you're seeing his game where he looks really comfortable. I remember him getting in that skirmish in Saskatchewan to kind of amp up the rivalry a little bit on the road game. But I wouldn't say, I mean, it's hard to find a disappointment with this team right now at the halfway point, as well as they've been playing. Because even the guys that I thought might have been, a little disappointing have actually been okay. Actually, you know what? One of the guys I kind of hope to see more for is Michael Okafor, actually. In terms of I feel like that guy, he's a great defender. We've seen that over and over again. But I feel like he has flashes of just, great offense, but like the finish sometimes just isn't there. So I think that's a guy that I'd like to see clean up a little bit in terms of being able to finish, because his defense is incredible. He creates a lot of turnovers and he creates a lot of offense, but I don't know if it's just a matter of he's overthinking it or just, I don't know what it is. I'm not going to speculate too much, but there's something there that's not clicking just yet. So if I had to say the disappointment, I think Simon is still best is yet to come in this league, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But he's, again, U Sports. This is a huge learning curve for him and the other U Sports guys, because I was also impressed with Diego Mafia from Vancouver, who hasn't played in a few games either, and he's had some stellar games out there. So, but in terms of, I think Michael Okafor is a guy that I think can really put it into next gear. I think he's going to have a Glenn Yang game, like in terms of, one game that just goes off and things just kind of click. And I hope that's the game that might just give that little boost of confidence, because the guy's a great basketball player. Defensively, you can't argue it, especially like on the ball defense. He's great, but I think he's capable of a lot more. And it'd be nice to see him get rewarded more for the defense.
Yeah, and this actually might be a good time to remind listeners, whether there's one or a billion, it's probably closer to one. But anyways, might be a good time to remind listeners, or tell listeners, I guess, that this podcast is not affiliated with the CEBL,
yes,
right?
Yeah,
I work for the Winnipeg. I work for the Winnipeg Free Press, so I cover the team quite often.
Yeah,
but I've got no stake in the game. Impartial, obviously, a huge basketball fan, but I'm not a Sea Bears fan. I'm a fan of the league. I'm a fan of Winnipeg having a pro basketball team, but make no mistake about it, I'm not a fan of the Sea Bears. I cover them, right? And for you as well. I mean, you're a sideline reporter at Sea Bears games, but you work for the league, not the Sea Bears.
And I work for CTV as well. So yeah, totally. So great call. Yeah, this is not affiliated in any way. This is just as two reporters that follow this league and are at all or most of the home games. We're just giving you what we see. You're at every post game interview, at the podium and stuff like that, shoot arounds, whatever it is. So we're just trying to bring the best coverage that we can from the inside information that we have to share with you so you can enjoy this passion and, follow this team. Because I don't think if there is a CBears podcast, I don't know where it is. So we might be the exclusive right now, but I'm sure there'll be more down the road as this team gets more popular. But yes, this is not biased. We are covering the league. We're trying to keep an eye on everything going on to give you the most, to the last dot of information that you need to follow this team and this league, because it is a lot of fun to cover.
Yeah, so if this team goes 3-7 down the stretch, I mean, we'll be bashing the heck out of them. That's
we will be critical. We will be critical. Yeah. I also want to point out, just for that correction on Jelani Watson-Gale, it is Brussels. He signed with the Brussels basketball. So yeah, congratulations to him. Although I didn't like it because in the post, they only mentioned his Bristol Flyers averages and not his CBears averages. So come on, Brussels, get with it.
Wow, come on, yeah, no kidding. Jeez.
All right, okay, let's get on. So who's your disappointment so far?
I think it has to be AJ Hess. And actually, it's interesting because when they signed him, he probably had one of the most impressive resumes out of anyone they've signed. But he's been pretty bad, honestly. I think he's shooting for 3. I just had here a second ago on the year. He's shooting 283 from deep, and he's a shooter. I mean, he's supposed to be at least. So he's been pretty shaky, and it's kind of funny. So the team, before every game, they have game notes. I mean, every pro team does basically, and they give these to reporters and media and stuff just to have some more kind of background on players and trends and whatnot. And usually, like, that team, like someone who works for that team writes these game notes, right? Obviously, so for the Jets, for example, sorry to throw them under the bus, but they could lose 10 games in a row, but they'll find some kind of positive stat about whoever, and that'll be in the game notes, kind of thing, right? So that's kind of the things you expect. But there is good nuggets in there too. So not totally bashing the Jets, but yeah, in the CBears game notes, it even said that AJ Hess is struggling right now. Like that's how obvious it's been. He can't even really defend it. But I think he is kind of slowly turning a corner a little bit. But yeah, I did think though he was going to be a lot more involved in the offense. I mean, who knows? Maybe with the way Teddy Allen's playing, it's just lacked his touches. But then that's not even a good excuse either, because guys like EJ and Chad, and Jelani, we keep mentioning that they're getting theirs too. So yeah, I don't know if maybe AJ just happened to not be a great fit with this team so far. It's
which could be a thing. Honestly, the only thing that keeps me from making him my disappointment is that he has hit some big shots. Like he has hit some threes. Like he has stepped up at times, but not in a, we're not talking about taking over the game in the fourth quarter or anything like that. And you're right. The consistency with his shooting is something that surely needs to improve, because that's a guy, as you said, that was brought in for that purpose and has a track record, with quite a bit of professional experience. So could be a few things there, like you say. The other hard part with this, for all the players, and it's not necessarily an excuse because some players are adapting, but it was a short training camp. It was 8 days training camp, and it's a short season. So, that's, I wonder how difficult that is to get into that mindset of, when you're having a bad stretch, it's not an 82 game season, it's 20. Right. So I wonder how much that plays a factor too. I don't know what the other regular seasons his were, right? Like what the sample scale was. Does he get better as the season gets on? Things like that, which is what we're going to learn a lot in the second half of the season. So we'll get to that, because we are going to briefly look at the second half season schedule to see what we could expect from the important games and where we can see the season turning. Before that, though, so we got the disappointment out of the way. What do you want to start with? Do you want to start with MVP, breakout player, or Canadian for the season?
Well, you know what? Let's the MVP segment it'll be 3 seconds.
Yeah, so let's just get it out of the way. Agree? Teddy Allen for sure. Okay. Yeah, there's we've already talked a lot about Teddy, but like I said, that guy can will his way to 25, 30 points a game, and it looks like he's having a terrible game. Then you look at the stat sheet and you're like, man, how does this guy have 22 points? Like, everybody's draped all over him, and he's missed a few shots. But the other thing that is really underrated with Teddy, and we talked about this on Reporter Road just the other day, is his rebounding. Like, he's fourth in rebounds right now. So he's averaging defensively. He's averaging 9.1 rebounds a game. He has 91 total rebounds. I mean, here's a guy that is putting it in at both ends of the floor because a lot of them are defensive rebounds, which means he's back there playing defense. He's not just cherry picking for his spots to score or looking for the open break. And I know that is something that the Seabears would like to see more of, is their transition game improve as it goes forward, because they've had some lapses in there and that often becomes a topic of conversation in timeouts. But he's all over the floor. And like, if you look at, he leads the team in almost everything. But then if you look at the league, like, he's top 10 in a lot of key categories. Like, this guy does it all. Like, whether it's 3-point shooting, whether it's taking it to the basket, rebounding, because of the attention he draws, he does have the ability to make plays. Even if he's not directly making the play, as you said earlier, just having that presence on the court, it opens up for other guys, where guys like AJ Hess need to make those shots, right? Like, you're going to get your openings because of the guy, everybody's targeted on. Like, I remember that Edmonton game. It seemed like their game plan was essentially like, triple team Teddy, and we'll try to double team EJ Anasike, who's the second leading scorer on the team for the Seabears. And, we'll just break out to or close out on whoever gets the ball as fast as we can, but we'll let them make plays as long as we take care of Teddy. And he still had 20-something, I think 25 points that game. And I mean, they did smoke him. It kind of worked in that sense, but it was just, he just commands a different sense of urgency from other teams. I mean, he's probably, at least in Winnipeg for sure, the most NBA ready player. Like, this guy, I'm sure, is going to get an opportunity in the NBA sooner than later, whether it's, a 10-day contract or whatever. Same with Justin Wright Foreman in Saskatchewan, who has some NBA skill, but they went head to head on Friday, and man, he was the one that came out of the gate first before, Wright Foreman really picked up in the second half. But that was a fun matchup to watch, because those are two guys, one that has NBA experience with Utah in Wright Foreman, and a guy who's been at the doorstep. He's done summer leagues, with the Denver Nuggets, and not only with the team that just won the championship, and has been a powerhouse for the last couple of years. So, I mean, he's a guy that is fun to watch. He could take over a game. And the one thing I'll say is, I want to say there was one game where I felt like he was kind of forcing it during the target score. Maybe it wasn't target score, but when the team was down, there are times where, he feels like he really has to take it on his own. But overall, like, I don't find him to be overly selfish with the ball. When he's taking shots that may not be the best shots to take, he's a different guy. Like, you and I, if we were playing, our coach would probably ream us out for some of those shots, but he's making the shots, and he's carrying this team in a lot of ways too. So I don't know. I know he has a track record for inconsistency through college and everything else, but so far through 10 games, you take away that first game, he's been pretty bang on. He's 2 40-point games at 42 against Scarborough, his old team, to tie the record. He's tied the record for 3 points made in a game with 9. I mean, this guy's taking full advantage. He wants to show that he can dominate this league, and he pretty much is. Every coach you talk to, they know who he is. They know he's a threat. So he's, I think, by far our MVP.
You said it all there. Yeah. Yeah, there's no debate there. Yeah. No, he made my job easy for me. I appreciate it.
I was waiting for you to come in. Like, actually, I disagree, Joey. I think that...
Hey, I'm all up for a good debate. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to my cousin Teddy over here, yeah, there's nothing to debate. He's been that damn good. But
everybody calls him Teddy Buckets. You call him Teddy Cousin.
Exactly. He's got slightly better of a jump shot than I do, but yeah. But yeah, for top Canadian, though, I don't know if there's even a debate to be had for that one either. I mean, Glenn Yang did have a big game pretty recently, but I mean, and Chad has not been perfect. I mean, let's be honest, but he's been really good, though. I think in the last 4 games, he has 3 double-doubles. Like, he's really kind of finding his rhythm. And actually, what probably has impressed me the most about, well, maybe not the most, but one thing that really impressed me about Chad this season actually happened in game 1, going back to that again. But in game 1, when he did get in that foul trouble and he had to sit on the bench and watch, Simon, a guy with a fraction of the experience that he has, play so many minutes. And a lot of guys would have been sulking on the bench, right? I mean, it's very easy to say you're a team player, this, that, whatever, but it's game 1, your city's new team, you're the hometown guy, and you're sitting on the bench for most of the game in foul trouble. But he was the first one to stand up when Simon would get a bucket, and he was the most active guy on the bench. And so that to me is like, okay, this guy's a true leader, and they didn't just sign him or make him the first signing in franchise history because it's a good story because he's the Winnipeg guy. So I think Chad has added lots to this team off the floor as well. I mean, of course, all the marketing and the promotional stuff is the obvious things. I mean, when it was announced that Winnipeg was getting a team, I remember, saying to some people, I guarantee they're going to sign Chad Posthumus. Like that just makes the most sense.
You just knew. Yeah. And the thing is too, is like he had all that extra duty, like coming in, having to do the extra marketing, the extra, showcasing a team that didn't exist, right? Like he was the only voice for a while as the first signing, and he was doing all the interviews, and he took that like a champ, and there's a reason he's the captain, right? Like I think he's here. Means a lot more to him being in Winnipeg compared to the other stops that he's had. And like you say, like he's been big in moments. So you're a breakout, or sorry, you're a Canadian player, Chad Posthumus.
Yeah,
mine as
and also
well.
too, though. I mean, yeah, and just one more note on him. I mean, lots of games too. He doesn't finish the game because, I mean, just him being a 6'11" guy, he doesn't stretch the floor, right? So depending on the matchup, there are some teams he matches up against a lot better, and there's some teams where it's the last 5 minutes of the game or whatever he's sitting on the bench because you just doesn't make sense to have a 6'11" guy out there, but and they kind of play a small ball in a way. But yeah, even those situations too, he's never sulking that he's sitting on the bench to close out the game and whatever. Like he's a team guy. It seems like and whatnot. So I mean, and with him too. I mean, he's played in Japan. He's played in Argentina. He kind of had a cup of coffee with the Bulls, their summer league team one year as well. And I'd imagine this is probably the most fun he's ever had playing pro ball. Yeah. So yeah, I think
totally.
That's another slam dunk. Top Canadian for sure.
And the other thing too is like that's expected with Chad, right? Like as you said, there's a lot of small ball in this league. He doesn't stretch the floor, but that's his role, right? And he does it really well. And when the matchups are key, and Mike Taylor's talked about this, when it comes to a 5v5 matchup, when he has another big man, that's when he rises to the occasion. So when his time is called to kind of step up, he does. It's just not every game provides that opportunity. And I think that kind of goes with the playing time, right? It seemed like, wow, he's not getting a lot of playing time. But then you look at the last 4 games, he's averaging more than 20 minutes. And I think his season average is like 19.1 or something like that. So he's seeing a little bit more, but you look at some of those opponents that he's played. I like the Nick Ward one sticks out to me because he's one of the better big men in this league. And Vancouver's got that dual threat with Georgie B as well. So he is my top Canadian right now. And you add the fact that he's playing in Winnipeg. He's had the winning shot in that first game, and he's able to kind of hand off the spotlight without any issues. Honorable mention to Glenn Yang, though. I feel like he's been on the up and up. That was a big game where he had 14 points and 7 of them came in target score time. Like the Yang game where the Canada Life Center became one big Yang gang. Like it was crazy, man. Like that was fun to watch. I don't know if that's him, but it was nice to see that in that moment he totally capitalized on it. He's had a couple of big games, but take away a couple of games, you can make the disappointment on Glenn Yang too. So that's why he's not my top Canadian, because there's been a couple of disappointing outings. There's times where he's absolutely quiet on the floor and you can't, you don't see him out there essentially for a guy that gets as much playing time as he does. But no, he's come along those last couple of games. That Vancouver game to me, I felt was a bit of a statement by him. Like, I'm for real. I'm not here because I'm a Canadian. Like I can play. And when the pressure's on, I can deliver. And, the team seemed to really get behind it. Like that celebration when they came out with the water, during the post-game interview and things like that. Like that's where you see the tightness of this team. They wanted him to succeed. He did. And there was a celebration for it. So yeah, but Chad Posthumus, again, we agreed. Let's see if we agree on the breakout player of the first half.
Before we do that,
give
though,
it to
Joey,
you to
I
start.
just want to slide in with one thing here. Speaking of Glenn Yang, don't be surprised, though, if he's not the starting point guard for this team at the end of the year. Because there's another point guard who happens to be from Winnipeg who's available right now, Jared Ogabemi Jackson, who he's played in France last couple of fall winters, and he's been on this league's radar since day one. He was drafted in the inaugural draft, and he just hasn't had the time to play in the league. But I've heard he's home this summer, and I've heard the Sea Bears they're interested in him. So we'll see. We'll see. That would be a pretty.
Have
cool
you ever seen him
story
play live?
I went to middle school with him.
Oh,
He,
really?
yeah,
He
shout
ended your
out to the
career.
basically. Shout out to the Leland North Lions. But yeah, I was in grade 6. He was in grade 8, so we're going, quite a ways back here. But honestly, even then, like I played a lot of basketball growing up. Even then, though, you could tell, okay, this guy has something that nobody else has, and he was just in grade 8 at the time, and then he goes to Garden City. Sadly, not Maples Collegiate, where I went to school. He went to the dark side. Went to Garden City. Started on their varsity team in grade 9. Was like their best player in grade 9 too, I believe, and had 4 awesome years there. I believe they won a provincial title or 2 with him, and then went to the Calgary Dinos and has been playing pro ever since. He's been to a couple different countries over there. So yeah, he's carved out a really really impressive career for himself, and I think it'd be a really cool story if he one day played for the Sea Bears, and who knows, maybe it could happen this year. Like I said, he is home right now, but it's a pretty grueling season. Playing overseas in Europe, they have also all these cup tournaments and stuff too on the side, right? So sometimes when it gets to summer, you got to just heal your body, kind of thing. But just throwing it out there, you never know, it could happen. So and Glenn Yang's a good player, but
Yeah, and it'd be nice to see if there's some internal competition for that because they're both Canadians. So you put that Canadian pressure on. You can't just start because you're the Canadian now. Like there's actually another guy there. So does that bring him to another level? And even if he loses the starting spot, sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be worse. You might be better at a lesser role, right? So who knows how that works out? Good thing to keep an eye on, and of course we'll have any updates with that as it goes forward. But with that, we will go to breakout player of the year. My breakout player of the year, I don't think it's a surprise. We talked about him a lot already. Jelani Watson-Gale, absolutely, a guy that I wasn't expecting to have this kind of an impact, and his clutch performance as well. I think he leads the league in 3 points made at or the 3-point field goal percentage at 50%. Like this guy's been fire from beyond the arc, and going back to the whole starting thing, this guy is an early contender. It's tough. I haven't watched every game from every team, but I would imagine he's going to be a front runner for the sixth man of the year, the way he's been playing. Just the amount of game winners he had, foul shot or not, like those are high pressure situations. He's answered the toll to, and I honestly think if he's the one international spot. So the way these rosters work, 70% needs to be Canadian with one international spot, meaning overseas outside of North America. He's from England or from the UK, so he's over as the international player. But because of the rule of having 2 Canadians on the floor, I think in a perfect world he starts, right? If we don't have that rule, I think he's a starting point guard. You might even see his numbers go up, but it's difficult in this league because sometimes when you have to make a substitution, you have to make 2 substitutions to make sure that you have that second Canadian on the floor at all times, right? So Jelani, it almost works against him, but that's why I think that 6th man of the year award is so important in this league particularly, because it's not necessarily because you weren't good enough to be in that starting lineup. It's just you're there, just the circumstance in this one, right? So for me, he's been the breakout guy for sure. I've had a ton of fun watching that guy throughout the season so far.
there will be a time where I'll go JJ Redick on you, Joey, and totally disagree, and we'll have a good debate here. But yeah, I can't. I was gonna say Stephen A, but I'm not a Stephen A guy. I'm a big JJ Redick. He's killing it on TV right now, and the
You kind
Raptors
of
even
look like
interviewed
JJ
him.
Redick a bit.
Well, if you haven't seen me shoot a basketball, if you had, you definitely would not say that. But but yeah,
He
I
doesn't play
can't
basketball
disagree.
anymore. So.
Yeah, fair. We're in the same industry now, so yeah. But no, I can't disagree with Jelani. No, absolutely, and that's a great point that you made. That actually the 6th man in this league actually even means even more. So that's a good point. But I only have one more Sea Bears question for you, Joey. Then there's a non-Sea Bears thing. Actually, maybe 2 non-Sea Bears things I wanted to bring up. Like, I guess maybe in closing for some Sea Bears talk, because we're basketball guys, right? So we're gonna squeeze in some
Yep.
NBA and some U Sports hoops and Canada basketball stuff too here and there. And Joey's a big Celtics fan, so we won't let him go Bill Simmons here and reference the Celtics every chance he gets. But you can drop some Celtics here and there. You just got Kristaps Porzingis. So, but yeah, my question, I think, just to close with Sea Bears, or the closing discussion with Sea Bears, though, halfway mark, 7-3. What's your prediction for how their season is going to end?
So I want to take a quick look at the second half schedule, right? So there's 10 games left. It's 5-5. So there's 5 on the road, 5 at home. There's 2 stretches though. So basically they play the Niagara River Lions, which is a game I'm really interested to see. They haven't played a lot of East teams. They're going to play them all this in the second half of the season. So that's another thing. You're not playing the Vancouvers anymore. You played them 3 times. You've got 1 game left against the Rattlers. You do play the Surge a couple times, but yeah, you're seeing the Eastern teams now for the first time around. So it'll be interesting to see because there's a lot of parity in the East Conference and how they're going to play against them. But the stretch where I can kind of see things turning now is they're going to go on a 3-game road trip in Ottawa to play the Blackjacks, the Montreal Alliance, and then the Edmonton Stingers, who we've seen them get burned by already. So again, these are 2 teams that they've not seen and a team that's kicked their butts. So that to me is the interesting one. I don't know if I can narrow it down to a key game, but I think that is a key series, that 3 games. On the other hand, they do have 3 home games. The crowd behind them, again, the Rattlers. Montreal comes here for the first time, and Calgary also coming here for the first time. So we'll see if, there's still some, like a safety net, I guess I'm getting at. If you go 0-3 in that case, you still have 3 games to kind of make up at home. But then the last 3 games, 2 are on the road, right? And then you finish at home with the last game of the year against Edmonton. So it's an interesting schedule. It's very balanced in terms of home and away. But again, I think the crucial part, the one I'm really circling on my calendar, is from Sunday, July 2nd. It's a 1 o'clock game against the Blackjacks. And then that Monday game, the very next day, they're in Montreal playing Monday night. And then they have a couple days off. The Saturday, July 8th, they play Edmonton. To me, that could be a huge swing in the season. Everything's going well, but things could turn really quickly, kind of like in the CFL. To me, that's that stretch of the schedule that I really got my eye on.
But we still need a prediction here, Joey. I mean, you can drop all the stats and info on us here. You
Okay.
can't get out of making a prediction. What's the final record, and how far do they make it in the playoffs, assuming they do make it? So putting you on the spot here.
Okay, so my do you want record prediction?
I want it all, record, and how far they make it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna go 14-6. I think they're gonna mirror. I don't think they are. I'm gonna predict that they mirror their record in the second half. I think they're gonna make the playoffs. I think at this point, 7-3, as much as they're an expansion team and expectations weren't very high to start the season, at 7-3 now you have to make the playoffs. Come playoffs, I think they're a Final Four. After that, I have no idea. Again, they haven't played enough Eastern teams. So I think the Western Conference, they have a really good chance. But then again, Edmonton started turning things around. They're now in 3rd place, just behind Calgary. That in itself, the Battle of Alberta, is going to be a tough rivalry. So, there's like that added kind of fuel there in terms of just not wanting to fall behind Calgary and Calgary wanting to fall behind Edmonton. So they're definitely I think it's safe to say they're a Final Four team. I'd be ultra disappointed if they don't make the playoffs. I'd be just disappointed if they didn't get to the Final Four based on the record that they put together. So yeah, I think they should get there, but I honestly, I can't say they're a championship team. It's just, there's a lot of teams out there that I think, like even Vancouver, man, like I know they swept them, but I don't know, like a sweep means nothing in the playoffs. That's a team that's played pretty well, and they've tested them at times. So once you get to that point, it's one good game, right? It's not a series anymore. These are 1-game knockouts. So that's another thing that makes it hard. It's not like you can say like, in a best of 3 or a best of 5, they'd win. They could have one bad game and it's over. And that goes for every team in this league. So I would say my prediction, 14-6, I guess, is, if the math is correct, is 7-3 14-6, and I think they should be a Final Four team in this year's. Even though it's their first year, it's a big target, but they're off to a flying start. Now you got to make the best of it. You?
I think, so I think Friday night said a lot about this league. So that's when the Sea Bears played Saskatchewan, and the Rattlers, they're the last place team in the league. I was going to say the worst team in the league, but I feel that's too strong of a word even, because if you watch that game, they stuck it to Winnipeg for the in the middle quarters. Like, they really outplayed the Sea Bears for 2 quarters. And if you just sat someone down, didn't tell them the records, didn't give them any context, I don't think anyone would have thought that was a last place team. So that just kind of shows just how even all these teams are. You look at the East, even the record's even more tight-knit over there too. So yeah, I think with that, it is so important if you can get the number one seed because that gives you that bye to the semis. So the number two seed, you play the winner of the 3 versus 4 play-in game in the quarters. Winner of that
Yeah.
goes to the semis to play the one seed. So if you could get that one seed and you can skip all that nonsense, right? You're laughing, you're sitting in the final four. That's a darn good spot to be. And because really, even a 3 or 4 seed, even a play-in team could pull a Miami Heat in this league easily and make it to the finals, right? So
Well,
yeah,
super easy in this league. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. So right now they have that number one spot, and if they could keep that, that's big time. But yeah, like you said, I mean, until we really see them play those teams out east, it's kind of hard to evaluate them. Like, who knows? Maybe the East is a lot better,
Yeah.
right? It's hard to say because we've just seen mostly West play
Totally.
West and East versus East kind of thing. But yeah, I think Final Four is a safe bet. But you know what? I think there's something about this team, man. I really do. I think they're going to make it to the finals. I don't think they're going to win it, but I think there's something going with this team. There's
So you
just
have them
some
going all the way to the
development.
finals. Okay.
They're gonna pull a Scarborough shooting scars and they're gonna make it to the finals and come up just short. But hey, that's still a darn good story. But yeah, so that's my prediction. Record wise, yeah, I'll go. I think 13-7. I think they're gonna not stumble, but not have as good of a second half, but they'll make the finals. So, and if you told any Sea Bears fan or you told anyone who works for the team, plays for the team before the year that that's how this season would shape out, they would say, "Where do I sign?" Right? Because again, off the hop, people had no idea what to expect from this team. People thought this could have been a last place team. There's some pretty, there's some people around town who know their basketball, and I'm in talking with them and whatnot. And I wasn't the only person who thought this team was not very good on paper. So yeah, they've been a huge surprise, but I think there's just something about them. And again, they've proven they could win in so many different ways. I would not be surprised if they make the final. I think it's too early to say that they're going to be a championship team, like you said, but a final run, yeah, I think that's possible. And I think it'd be really cool to see how the city gets behind them for that. I mean, I remember when the Gold Eyes won their last American Association title, they won it at home. Game, I think it was the deciding game of the series, best of 5 series, and Shaw Park sold out, right? And we saw with the Winnipeg Ice too, playing at Canada Life in the playoffs. I mean, they didn't sell out obviously, but they had really good turnout. So whenever one of Winnipeg's teams gets hot and they go on a run, like people come out in droves to support them, and I think it'd be really cool for especially the basketball community to have something like that to get excited about. So that would be my prediction.
Extra points for the Gold Eyes drop. Anybody who knows me, love going to Gold Eyes games. Winnipeg Gold Eyes Shaw Park. That's a beautiful afternoon in the sunshine. Just taking a look at the schedule here, like they played 3 games against Eastern Conference teams. 2 on the road, they lost to Brampton. Then the next night they beat Scarborough in a game that was a lot closer than it probably should have been. And then they also played Brampton at home, and they won that one pretty handily, 110-89. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Like they're really being introduced to some new teams, but it'll be finals. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not going to disagree with you. I think they do have it there. I think it's crucial they get that first home playoff game. If they can host the playoff game before the tournament, the championship weekend in Vancouver, because once you're championship weekend, I actually do think, Taylor, and this might be a bit bold, I would not be shocked to see a contingent of fans in Vancouver for Winnipeg if they were to make it there, but it's not going to be the same, especially with Vancouver getting a guaranteed spot in the semis. It's just to win 2 games on the road. That they can't rely on the excitement that they've gotten here in Winnipeg, throughout that. So that's kind of like the wild card for me. It's you end the season on the road. And you don't get the boost that's been, obviously there, because it's not just the Sea Bears players talking about it. It's the other teams, players, coaches, presidents, owners, everybody that's been through has been very impressed. And, we're not here to pump anybody's tires, but, respect where respect is due. And what they've been able to do from a game day, I think, has really set the standard higher in this league. So, kudos to the people at Winnipeg Sea Bears for pulling off the game day fun, because they do a stellar job with that. And it has given the team a boost. But come championship weekend, who knows? So, yeah.
That's
also,
a good point.
I don't know if you noticed my
Thank
shirt.
you for rocking the
I thought you'd be
Winnipeg
rocking
Thunder.
your Winnipeg Thunder.
Nice.
Winnipeg
yeah.
Thunder, a little Winnipeg basketball history. I thought you have a hat that I really want. I thought you were going to be
I
rocking that
do.
today.
I
But
do.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
basketball fans, Taylor, basketball fans. And yeah, I'm kind of pumped that we got Porzingis, but I'm really upset that the Celtics let Marcus Smart go. Like, oh my
Heart and
God,
soul
he
of the
was
team, man.
such
Heart and soul of the
I
team.
know.
Yeah,
You
that's
know
rough.
what though? I remember I used to have a podcast called The Fan Wag with my buddy Leo he lives in San Francisco. So we're two Celtics fans that live like opposite ends of the globe essentially at the time. And he was so upset when they traded Isaiah Thomas and thinks that there's still a curse to this day that they traded him. I disagreed. I thought, you know what? His value was never going to be any higher. Don't overpay for that guy. And it's kind of proven to be true. And I think it's the same thing, not to the same regard, but like you've got everything and then some out of him, out of Smart. His value's high, man. You got Porzingis in a 3-team trade. It kind of fits the younger narrative. They're all around the same age now with, Tatum and Brown. So, yeah, I'll say I'm not happy about it, but I understand it, and I don't know how to emotionally feel about it. It's a tough spot to be in. That is my Celtics rant. Thank you for coming to my Celtic Talk.
There we go. That's our first ever edition of Celtics Talk with Joey Slattery. I would do Pacers talk, but even I know no one on
talk
the
about?
planet other than me and the fine folks of Indiana give a damn about the Indiana Pacers. So I won't bore anybody, not even you, with any Pacers talk. But don't sleep on us. We're coming. We're coming around. I like what they're doing. But anyways, actually, I'm kind of glad.
Eastern Conference.
Yeah, you referenced the Celtics and the Winnipeg Thunder shirt and how a big basketball fan. I think maybe just so people kind of maybe learn more about us and why we even wanted to do this podcast in the first place. I think I can speak for both of us when I can say that you and I we're the type of guys maybe growing up where we would prefer to watch court surfing on the score than maybe watch hockey night in Canada. Not to say we don't like hockey too, right? But we're basketball guys, right?
Huge drop, Taylor Allen. Yes,
best show
on the
of all
court
time.
surfing, man.
Yeah.
Yes. It is. It is social media before social media, man. You were just taking me to live games. Oh, you're getting so many gold stars today, man. You keep an eye on your mail. I'm sending them all, man.
Well, on that note, though, maybe I'll pass the baton to you first. Maybe kind of take us through how you became a basketball fan and whatnot. Because growing up with the generation that we did, right? I mean, we had Steve Nash, but there wasn't the amount of Canadian talent or Canadian League like we have now.
So, and for those who are still listening, thank you. Awesome. And we are wrapping up shortly. But for a little context, really hit basketball. I think the first time I played was grade 6, like one of those tournaments. We played like another school in one game. Then I went to junior high school. I didn't play in grade 7. But then I was one of the bigger guys. I think I wasn't much shorter than I am now in 8th grade. Like I was a giant. In fact, my feet shrunk. I think I was like a size 12 in like grade 8, and then now I'm like size 11. But anyway, I was a big kid, so I was a post player, and I loved it. And then when I got to high school, I played one last year of hockey in 9th grade, and then I played basketball and hockey, but it was a lot to keep up. So then I went to basketball. And all my best friends from high school was my basketball team. I still keep in contact with a lot of them. But it really did take over our lives, man. Like we weren't playing basketball in games or practicing. Like we had a set of outdoor courts near our school that we play at in the summer. Northern College in Timmins was, you could pay like $3 or something and we'd play, all day, whether it was the weekends or evenings, whatever it was. And then we were playing, it wasn't 2K, it was NBA Live. That's how old I am. We were like NBA Live was still better than NBA 2K at the time. And then NBA 2K took off. So we were always playing. Became a Celtics fan simply because the games that used to play, I think it was like Sportsnet. It might have still been like CTV Sportsnet back then. But you get, what's his name, Heinzen as the color commentary. And he was so biased to the Celtics. I loved it. And he had that thick accent. And he was just like, I loved it. I bought into the Celtics. They were the same color as my high school. Antoine Walker and Paul Pierce era, man. Like Paul Pierce was just like coming into the league at the time when I was really kind of hitting my stride as a fan. Obviously, I follow the Raptors because they're on TV all the time. But yeah, no, it's all Celtics all the time. And, you know, I even put a post on my LinkedIn page. Actually, I don't post a lot on that, but I just felt it was important to share. Like, you know, leagues like this, whether it's the CEBL or CPL, the Canadian Premier League for soccer, you know, the CFL's been around forever. But, you know, for a long time, for guys like you and I, Taylor, if we wanted to cover professional sports in this country, it was either hockey or football. Right. And you and I grew up basketball fans first, I think is safe to say. And, you know, we're getting this opportunity to do it at home. Right. Which is really, really cool. Like you don't have to move to, you know, Toronto and try to get in a very saturated Raptors market. You know, obviously we'd love to work in the NBA, but I thoroughly love this. Like this is, you know, a dream in a lot of ways that we get to do this, that we get to have this podcast. And it's great to see these leagues come in and giving these opportunities, because it's not just the players. It's very much about the players. They get those opportunities, but you've got coaches, you've got support staff, you've got, you know, people doing PA, whatever it is, video production, reporters. You know, we're getting a whole different aspect to our job that we never really got at this level before this, right? Especially in Winnipeg. So, yeah, I'm a huge basketball fan. I think it's really cool that we get a chance to cover this league at home, and it's a really good quality of ball.
Very well said. And yeah,
For you, though, you didn't get into it.
Yeah, no, well for me, just to maybe kind of paint the picture, I'll give an example. So I remember when the Raptors traded Vince Carter, which ended up being the worst trade ever. But anyways, so the Raptors traded Vince Carter. It was in December. They got Eric and Aaron Williams. Not exactly a fair return for Vince Sanity, to say the least. But anyway, so again, this was in December. So I think the day or two after the trade happened, the Williamses, they were making their Raptors debut, and I was at a family friend's house. I was 12 or whatever it was. I don't even know. And everyone was upstairs watching Team Canada World Junior game. I don't know if it was the first game of the tournament or what it was. But everyone is upstairs watching the World Juniors. And I'm in the basement watching the Raptors play whoever, because I was just dying to see Eric and Aaron Williams. I was just so excited. Well, not excited, actually. That's definitely was not excited. But I was intrigued to see what the Raptors got for Vince Carter. And obviously, within 2 quarters, you could tell that the Raptors got totally gypped. But anyways, just to paint the picture, though, you know, despite being Canadian and whatever, basketball is always the go-to. Basketball has always been the passion of mine. I love all sports, but, you know, grew up playing basketball. I coached basketball for a bit. I ref basketball for a bit. Yeah, I've always loved the sport. Always loved watching the Raptors, even in their Craptors days, right? You know, watching those terrible teams. I mean, I love just watching basketball, right?
And the LeBronto era, where they can never beat LeBron in the playoffs.
Even before LeBronto, there were some worse days before.
Oh yeah, there were some bad days. Sure.
Well, those are the days I grew up with. But yeah, just quick background on how I became a Pacers fan for anyone that even cares. I remember this was during the Craptors day, so it was pretty tough being a Raptors fan. But I remember seeing this documentary, I think it was done by Fox Sports, about Reggie Miller. And I just totally fell in love with this guy's story, you know, small market team, spending his whole career there. So this was probably only a couple years before he retired. So that became my guy, right? If you follow me on social media, at Taylor Allen 31, might as well throw the plug in there. But the 31 represents Reggie Miller. That's my guy. I always wear 31. I just loved his story, and, you know, going up against the Knicks and going up against Michael Jordan, and, you know, the pushing off MJ, hitting the game-winning 3, his clutchness. I just loved everything about him. So even after he retired, I stuck with the Pacers, and it's been, you know, there's been a couple highs mixed in there, but it's been mostly pretty rough. And I've only met one other Pacers fan in Winnipeg, so I can't say I'm the only Pacers fan. But yeah, I've just always been passionate about basketball. And, you know, the city has 47 hockey teams, so now we're down to 46. But we've been so overdue for a basketball team, because growing up in the Maples, I know how much this city loves basketball. And we've proven it so far with the turnout and the vibe at CEBL's games. So it's so great that there's so many people that also share the same passion as us, right? That now get to enjoy it and enjoy that on a local stage, right? So yeah, I'm over the moon, excited just like you that we have Pro Hoops here in Winnipeg, and you know, hopefully this podcast can, you know, lead to even more excitement about it, right? And we plan to hopefully get some other people on the show eventually. You know, have some guests talk Bears, talk CEBL, just talk hoops in general. Joey and I, we met the other week. We kind of came up with a list of some people we plan on reaching out to. So we'll see where that takes us. But yeah, I thought we were gonna go for like 30 minutes today. We're at like over an hour.
I was gonna say normally they'll probably be a lot shorter than this. This is the first one. We're kind of introducing yourself. You know, you're getting to know us. You're getting to know the team. There's a lot to kind of cover. You know, trying to cover a full half of a season in 45 minutes is a little tough. Half an hour. But we do aim to be a little bit shorter from the get-go. That said, this will be our weekly show, and we will put out alerts. For me, it's at Joey Slattery, CTV, Twitter, Instagram, things like that. So we'll put out the things. We'll probably eventually get a page up for this show as well, just so you can keep up with alerts anytime we're going to be going on. We plan to have a video aspect to this, a stream. And hopefully a post game too. That's kind of our next big thing. Is just you know, after the game's done, some you could tune into to celebrate, to vent, whatever it is. But yeah, stick with us as this show develops. But right now, you know, we're really happy to have the first show of Target Show Weekly. Target Score Weekly show. Got to even get the name right.
We don't even know the name of the show. I think I said Target Zone a couple of times earlier. So whatever, we'll figure it out.
So we're getting there. But Taylor, this has been great. First fun episode for all those that are tuning in. Thank you so much. Keep tuning in and enjoy the content. Have an exciting second half of the season coming up. Can't wait to get to it. Taylor and I will be here for the rest of the season and beyond. But next game is Thursday. That's against Niagara River Lions. So looking forward to that. Taylor, we'll see you next week.
You bet, man. Thanks. That's a lot of fun.
All right, this has been the Target Score. See ya. Thank you for listening to the Target Score Weekly podcast. To stay up to date with Winnipeg CBears and CEBL news, as well as future episode releases, follow Joey and Taylor on Twitter and Instagram at TaylorAllen31 and at Joey Slattery CTV. And wherever you're getting the podcast, be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode.